A girl vanished on her walk home in 1992. 25 years later, her father finds her diary in a storage locker, and then everything changed. She left school at 3:07 p.m. She never came home. 25 years later, her father opened a forgotten storage unit, and inside was a backpack with a diary and a name no one had mentioned. Not once, not in the reports, not in the search. June 3rd, 1992, Wednesday, cloud cover, mid-70s. Kids at Wilburn High School had just finished finals. The hallway smelled like old pencils and gym sweat. Sarah Haywood walked out the side door, carrying her algebra notebook. The bell had rung 7 minutes earlier. She wasn't in a rush. She wasn't worried. She had no idea someone was following her. She waved to her best friend, Kayla, at the light. Kayla turned left. Sarah went right. 11-minute walk home. Same as every other day. She never made it. Her father, Walter, was waiting on the porch. He watched the corner of Wilshire Avenue. Checked the clock 3 times between 3:30 and 3:40. By 4 o'clock, he was pacing. By 4:45, he had retraced the walk on foot. No sign of her. He called her friend. He called the school. He called the police by 6:12. They showed up an hour later. There was no search that night. No helicopter. No dogs. No doors knocked on. The officer wrote a report, asked if Sarah had a history of emotional behavior. Walter said no. They told him, she'll probably show up in a day or two. But she didn't. By the next morning, Walter had stapled missing flyers to every post in the neighborhood. Missing, Sarah Haywood, age 15, brown hair, green eyes, last seen wearing a light blue denim jacket and white sneakers. No one saw anything, not the crossing guard, not the bus driver, not the boy on the bike who lived 2 houses down. There were no dropped books, no torn clothes, no screams, just a vanishing, like someone pressed pause, and the space she stood in just emptied. The police took statements, interviewed her teachers, reviewed her locker. They found nothing unusual. Some candy wrappers, a doodle of a cat, a note to Kayla that said, "Remind me to tell you about the guy near the swings." They didn't ask what that meant. They didn't ask again. By summer, the search was quiet. Kayla and the other girls were discouraged from getting hysterical. The school counselor told them not to dwell, told Walter to consider moving forward. He didn't. Her room stayed exactly as she left it. Books stacked by the bed, shoes tucked neatly under the chair, backpack missing. He would have noticed that. She always hung it on the hook by the door. By the end of the year, her case file had 4 pages, 2 from the missing persons report, 1 interview summary, 1 flyer. The detective assigned to her case transferred departments. A new one came in, then another. By 1997, no one remembered her name except Walter. He started writing her letters, 1 every birthday, 1 every holiday, sometimes for no reason at all. He kept them in a drawer of her room, neatly folded, labeled by year. Some were 1 page, some were 15. Each one started the same way. "Dear Sarah, I know you're out there somewhere. In 2001, the case was closed. Presumed runaway. No further evidence. No person of interest." The official file ended there. But Walter didn't stop. He couldn't. He learned to live in the silence, to study it, to memorize it. Every shift in wind, every groan in the floor, every truck that passed in the night, always for a second too long. He wondered if it would stop out front. He still put up a flyer every June. Just 1, on the same light pole. He knew it wouldn't do anything, but it was the only ritual he had left. Then, In April of 2017, everything changed. The call came on a Thursday, 1:44 p.m. A man from a self-storage facility in Bridgestone, 2 towns over, said a unit had gone unpaid for 6 months. The name on the lease was Kendra Ellison. That name meant nothing at first, until Walter heard the birth date. It was Sarah's best friend from middle school. She moved away in '93. No one had seen her since. Walter drove to the unit the next morning. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't ask the police to come. Just parked, signed a waiver, and opened the door. It was a 5 by 10 unit. Cardboard boxes, a small Christmas tree, a crate of Tangled lights, and near the back, a backpack, blue, faded, frayed strap, with a red heart patch stitched on the side. Walter's knees buckled. It was hers. He opened the front pocket. Inside, a paperback copy of Wuthering Heights, a purple comb, a cassette tape, a spiral notebook. He opened the notebook. Her handwriting was unmistakable. Tight cursive, slanted, with little hearts over the I.S. May 10th, 1992. Mom says I'm overreacting. But I saw him again. The man in the brown coat. Same one from the store last week. Kendra says I'm imagining it. But I know what I saw. Page after page. Small notes. Moments she never told anyone. He waits near the swings. He doesn't look at anyone else. I cross the street. He crossed too. He smells like engine oil. And then, June 2nd, the day before she vanished. I'm writing this in case something happens. If they find this, tell my dad I love him. I don't know his full name, but I heard someone call him Ray. He lives near the train lot. He watches every day. Walter stopped reading. He sat down on the cold concrete, back against the metal wall, notebook in his lap, hands trembling. For 25 years, everyone told him it was in his head, that there was no one to blame, that Sarah probably ran. But now, he had her voice, in ink, in truth, and a name, not a last name, not an address, but enough to begin again. The page was torn at the edge, the handwriting hurried, like she had written it in a rush, or with fear. I don't know his full name, but I heard someone call him Ray. He lives near the train lot. He watches every day. Walter had read those words a dozen times. He folded the diary shut, took a breath, then opened it again. He didn't sleep that night, just sat at the table with a pen and a notebook, making a list. Ray, train lot, brown coat, engine oil, watches from the swings. May 19th, June 2nd. Diary found in 2017. Disappeared June 3rd, 1992. He opened the drawer next to the fridge, pulled out the town map he used during the search all those years ago, unfolded it slowly, marked Sarah's school, marked their house, and then circled a spot between the old train yard. It had been fenced off since the early 2000s, condemned, unused, no traffic in or out. But in 1992, it was just chain link and weeds, easy to slip through, easy to watch from. The next morning, Walter drove past it. It looked smaller than he remembered, but still quiet. The fence was locked. A weathered sign warned, property of Fralin Pacific, no trespassing. There were 2 trailers parked near the fence line. One had its windows blacked out. The other looked abandoned. Walter didn't stop. He just looked. Later that afternoon, he went to the town records office, asked for residential logs from the early 1990s. It took a while. The clerk was young. Didn't recognize Sarah's name. Didn't ask questions. After 20 minutes, she handed him a folder. There it was. A name. Raymond H. Liston, rented a small unit off Bayfield Avenue, less than 600 feet from the train lot. Lease began April 1992, terminated July 1992, 3 weeks after Sarah disappeared. No forwarding address, no emergency contact, just a name and a P.O. box. Walter copied the information, thanked the clerk, walked out without speaking. He sat in his car for 10 minutes, hands on the wheel, staring at the train yard through the windshield. The town had buried her, and buried him with her. They'd never looked at the lot, never canvassed it, never followed up on the man Sarah wrote about. And yet he'd been living there, less than a block from the swing set she always mentioned. That night, Walter went through his old box again. All the clippings, all the flyers, every note from every neighbor. He looked for any mention of the name Ray. He found one, buried at the bottom of a spiral notebook, written in pencil, faintly. Old guy, long coat, always near the chain link. Ray? He had asked about him. Back in 1992. The notebook proved it, but no one followed up. No one asked who he was, where he went. They just moved on. Walter went back to the storage unit the next day, spoke to the manager, asked about the woman who rented it, Kendra Ellison. The manager didn't know her, but had records, payment logs, rental ID, a partial phone number. She'd stopped paying 5 months ago. The contact number was disconnected, but the last payment had been made in cash from a local grocery store in Hollow Creek, only 14 miles away. Walter drove there that afternoon, asked around, went to the store, showed the manager the rental receipt. She shrugged. Too many people pay in cash. No security footage that far back. Nothing to go on. Walter parked near the edge of town, sat under a tree, opened the diary again. This time he noticed something he'd missed. A small line on the bottom of a page dated May 24th. He said I reminded him of someone. Said his niece used to play here. But he was looking at my hands, not my face. Walter closed the book, drove home, didn't speak for 2 days. Then he went to the train yard one more time. This time, he parked farther down, walked along the fence, watched the trailers. One of them had a light on, dim, flickering, and someone was inside, a shape moving slowly, wearing a long coat. Walter didn't approach. Not then. He just watched, waited until the light went out, and the figure disappeared. The next morning, he brought the diary to the police station, asked to speak to a detective. He sat down, opened the pages, read them aloud, word by word. He told them about the trailer, about the name, about the man Sarah wrote about 25 years earlier. The officer said they'd look into it, but Walter had seen that face before, the one that says, "We'll add it to the file." He didn't leave the diary. He just closed it and walked out. That night, he called Kayla, Sarah's old friend. She hadn't spoken to him in years. But when she heard his voice, she didn't hang up. She listened. Walter told her about the diary, the man, the trailer, the page she'd never seen. And Kayla said something strange. I saw him, too. Back then, near the swings. But I didn't think it mattered. She was crying. I should have said something. Walter didn't blame her. No one wanted to believe the worst. But now he had a name, a location, a witness, and Sarah's voice finally speaking again. But what he didn't know yet, what none of them could have imagined, was that someone else had been keeping records. Someone who remembered Sarah. And someone who had watched her father walk that same sidewalk every June 3rd for 25 years. The trailer sat just inside the fence line, half sunken in dirt, tin siding flaking. A single cracked window looking toward the street. The light inside hadn't come on again, not since Walter saw it flicker, and saw the man in the coat move across the doorway. He thought about knocking. Just once. Ask a simple question. Did you live here in 1992? Did you ever see a girl walk past his fence? But something told him not to. He waited instead. Watched. Brought coffee in a thermos. Sat in his truck 4 nights in a row. Nothing. No lights. No movement. Just wind in the chain link. And the faint sound of metal shifting when the breeze turned. Then on the 5th night, a dog barked, somewhere behind the lot. Sharp, panicked, and then a knock, but not on his window. From the fence, a voice, low, "Hey!" Walter stepped out. A girl stood on the other side of the chain link. Late teens, wiry, hair tied back, black hoodie. She didn't seem afraid, just tired. "You been watching the trailer?" she asked. Walter nodded. "You looking for someone?" He nodded again. "Your daughter?" That stopped him. "How do you—" She cut him off. "People talk. You ask the same questions in a small town long enough. Someone hears." She walked closer to the fence, pulled a pack of gum from her sleeve, popped a piece in her mouth. Didn't offer one. "Ray doesn't live there anymore," she said. "He hasn't in years." Walter stepped closer. "You knew him?" "No," she said, "but my mom did. I don't live here. Not really. I just come by sometimes." She scratched her arm. "Look down. My mom used to clean houses. Worked for a guy near the yard in the 90s. Said he was quiet. Drove a red truck. Smelled like oil." Walter felt his stomach tighten. "What was his name?" "I never asked. She called him Mr. R." She paused. "But she told me something once, when I was maybe 9. Said never walk past the fence alone. Said a girl went missing once, and the cops didn't come." She looked up, right at him. "I didn't know that was your daughter." Walter didn't speak. He didn't know what to ask, but she kept going. "He moved out fast," she said. "I remember 'cause my mom was scared. Said someone came to the house one night. Said he packed up and left. Said he didn't even take the furniture." She called a warning. Walter blinked. "A warning?" The girl shrugged. "Said he was being watched. By someone worse than the cops." She backed away. Pulled her hood up. "That trailer's empty now. But there's a shed behind it. Locked. Used to be his. No one ever goes in." She started to walk. Walter called after her. "What's your name?" She didn't stop walking. "Doesn't matter. But if you open that shed, don't do it alone." Walter stood there until the breeze shifted. The sound of gravel faded. Then he went home. He didn't sleep. Again, he read the diary. All of it, not just the pages with the name. All the parts he hadn't wanted to face before. April 12th. Math test went okay. Kayla says I'm being weird again. I'm just tired. He was near the steps today. Pretended to tie his shoe. He just stared. April 25th. Saw the coat again. Brown. Same elbow patch. He stood near the swings for 10 minutes. Didn't move. May 1st. I told the guidance counselor someone was following me. She said it was probably nothing. But she told me not to walk alone for a while. Then she never brought up again. Walter remembered calling the school that week. He had asked why Sarah didn't seem like herself, why she seemed quieter. She was pulling away. They'd told him everything was fine, but it wasn't. The next morning, Walter returned to the yard, parked 2 blocks away, walked the edge of the lot, found the break in the fence the girl had mentioned, slipped through. No cameras, no noise, just old weeds and wind. and the faint smell of rust. The trailer was still there. So was the shed. He approached slowly. The lock was old, thin. He didn't kick it, didn't break it. He pressed his hand to the handle and waited. Then he turned it. It was open. Inside, a chair, a folded tarp, 2 plastic bins, and in the far corner, a cardboard box, faded, soft at the corners, sealed with brittle tape. He knelt, opened it. Inside, papers, old magazines, gas receipts, a driver's manual, and at the bottom, a school photo. Sarah, grade 9, smiling, head tilted slightly. The photo was bent at the corner, but it was hers. He picked it up. There was writing on the back, S.H. Wilburn 15, and beneath that a single word, scrawled in pen. Pretty. Walter's hands shook. He put the photo in his pocket, left the rest, and stepped out of the shed just as a truck turned onto the gravel drive. Red, old, clean, too clean. The engine cut. The door opened, and a man stepped out. Thin, older, gray stubble, long brown coat. No expression. He looked at Walter, didn't speak, and Walter knew, without question, this was him. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He just stood there. The man in the brown coat, red pickup truck behind him, key still swinging from the ignition. Walter didn't move. The shed door was still open behind him. Sarah's school photo in his coat pocket, his mouth dry, breath slow, knees locked. The man looked older than Walter expected, but not weak. His face weathered, like someone who had worked alone for a long time. Hands tucked into his coat. One eye slightly drooped. Skin pale, lips tight. Not afraid. Just blank. Walter stepped forward. Only one question in his throat. Do you remember her? The man didn't answer at first. Then his eyes dropped to the ground. He nodded. Once. Sarah Haywood, Walter said. She walked past here every day. June 3rd, 1992. She never came home. Another pause. Then finally a voice. I didn't touch her. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't protest. It was something else. Resignation. I saw her, the man said. I watched her walk by. She looked like someone I knew. Walter stared. You followed her. You were at the school. You waited by the swings. You scared her. The man nodded again, slow, like someone lifting something too heavy. I thought about it, he said, but I never did. Walter's fist curled. You thought about what? Taking her. The man didn't answer. Then he turned, walked toward the trailer, opened the door. If you want to come in, he said, you can. Walter hesitated, then stepped through. The trailer was bare. No pictures. No furniture except a chair, a table, a folded cot. There were notes on the wall, scraps of newspaper, old sketches, strings and pins, photos, none of Sarah. But one article headline stood out. Wilburn teen disappears. No leads. Walter stared at it. Why keep this? Why save her picture? The man sat down slowly, went slightly at the knee. He spoke without looking up. Because no one else did. Because I know who took her. Walter froze. What did you say? The man looked at him directly now. It wasn't me, but I saw something. Back then, he stood, walked to a drawer, pulled out a small stack of photos, handed them to Walter. Black and white prints, blurry, taken from distance. One showed a van, dark green, unmarked, parked near the far fence behind the school. The date scribbled in pen, June 3rd, 1992. That van was there for 3 days straight, the man said, parked near the fence. Didn't belong to anyone local. Then on the 4th day, it was gone. Same day she went missing. Walter flipped the photo over. No plate number. No face. Just a shadow near the rear door. Why didn't you say something? Walter asked. Why didn't you go to the police? The man shook his head. Because they didn't listen before. And I wasn't clean either. I followed people. Stared too long. Asked questions I shouldn't. So I stayed quiet. Walter's voice broke. She was my daughter. The man swallowed, eyes low again. I know. And that's why I'm telling you now. He pointed to the 3rd photo. A close-up of a face near the van side mirror. Blurry. But Walter felt his chest tighten. He recognized the shape of the glasses, the slope of the chin, a face he hadn't seen in years. That's the vice principal, Walter whispered, from Wilburn High. That's Mr. Crane. The man in the coat nodded. I didn't know his name, but he met the van 3 times. He carried a clipboard, and he smiled when she passed. Walter stepped back, breath shaking. He remembered something from the diary. One line, thrown in between thoughts. Crane smiled at me again, but I don't think it reached his eyes. He had dismissed it. Back then, just a girl talking about her day. But now, it felt like a scream no one had heard. He was involved? Walter asked. The man nodded. I don't have proof. Just these. And what I saw. He walked to the cupboard, pulled out an old folder. Inside, receipts. More photos. One torn piece of notebook paper with a list of initials. He handed it over. Walter sat down, began to read. The man poured him water, sat across from him, and they didn't speak for a long time. When Walter left the trailer, it was past midnight. He drove home slowly, didn't turn the radio on, didn't open the windows. He just held the folder on his lap, one hand on the wheel, one hand on her photo, still in his pocket. Someone had known. Someone had helped. Someone inside the school. And now he had a face. A man who still lived in town. Still worked in education. Still passed children in hallways. Every day, Walter pulled into the driveway, turned off the engine, sat there, and whispered, I see you now. He didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the kitchen with the folder open, the photo on the table, her diary beside it. Every word he had ignored now read like a code. Every phrase a warning he hadn't seen. Mr. Crane, vice principal, strict, always calm, wore gray suits with 2 long sleeves, never raised his voice, but always watching. Walter remembered a moment, a week before Sarah vanished. She'd come home late, said she stayed after school for extra help. He'd asked, with who? She said Mr. Crane. At the time, it meant nothing. Now, it burned. He looked up his name. Daniel Crane. Still lived in Wilburn. Still worked at a middle school 1 town over. Retired from Wilburn High in 2004. No record of any complaints. No arrests. Nothing suspicious. But Walter knew that face. The one in the photo beside the van. He didn't call the police. Not yet. Not again. He didn't trust that route anymore. Not after what they didn't see the first time. Instead, he called Kayla, told her everything about the trailer, the man in the coat, the photos, the name. There was a long pause. Then she said, he always gave me the creeps. She told him Sarah never liked going to the office alone, that she avoided walking past the teacher's lounge. And that once, Sarah told her, if something ever happens, don't talk to him. He'll pretend to care. But he's the reason I'm scared. Walter hung up, sat with that for a long time, Then he made a decision. The next morning, he drove to Fairview Middle School, parked in the far lot, waited until lunchtime, watched the faculty lot, and at 12:17 he saw him, older now, but not changed, same gait, same expression. He carried a thermos in one hand, walked with purpose, didn't look around, didn't see Walter. Walter didn't confront him there. Too many kids, too many cameras. But he followed, waited, tracked his routine for 3 days. The man left at 4:15 every afternoon, took the same road home, lived in a 2-bedroom brick house with drawn curtains, had no visible family, no pets. On Friday, Walter knocked. Crane opened the door slowly, recognized him instantly, but didn't say his name, just said, "I wonder when you'd come." Walter felt the air leave his chest. "You remember Sarah?" Crane didn't blink. Everyone remembers a missing girl. Walter stepped forward. "You were seen, near the train yard, meeting a van." Crane looked away. "You don't have proof." "That picture, it's blurry. Could be anyone." Walter pulled it from his pocket, held it up. Crane didn't even glance at it. "It won't bring her back." That made Walter's hand shake. "Say her name." Crane's mouth tightened. "You shouldn't be here." "I have rights." "This isn't how it works." Walter stepped back, not because he was afraid, because he suddenly saw the truth. This man had been protected, for years, by silence, by time, by a system that forgot girls like Sarah. And now, he thought he could still hide. Walter turned, walked down the steps. Crane called after him. "You don't know what you're doing. You'll destroy more than you think." Walter kept walking, but he didn't go home. He drove straight to Helen's house, Sarah's old English teacher, now retired, widowed, quiet. She opened the door in a bathrobe, surprised to see him. He explained everything. All of it. The diary, the photo, Crane, and her face changed. Not shock, not disbelief, recognition. "He was always around," she said softly. "Always offered to walk the girls to detention. Said he didn't want them walking alone." Walter asked if she ever told anyone. Helen nodded. "The principal. Once. But he told me Crane had seniority, that I was imagining things. So I let it go." Walter stared. "Do you think he hurt her?" Helen didn't answer, just looked down at the cup in her hands. "I think we all let something happen, because it was easier not to see it." He left the photo with her and drove home. This time, he stopped in front of the porch, looked at the old oak tree, at the rope swing Sarah used when she was little. He saw her there, feet tucked, hands tight, laughing in the wind. And now, he couldn't hear the sound of her voice anymore, only silence. That night, he did something he hadn't done in decades. He opened the drawer in Sarah's room, pulled out every letter he ever wrote her, 37 in total. He spread them across the floor, read them aloud, every page. And in the last letter, from June 3rd, 2017, he had written, "I don't know if you're alive, but I know I was supposed to find you. I'm not giving up." The next morning, he got a knock on the door. A woman in her 30s, dark eyes, tired, holding something in her hand. "Are you Walter Haywood?" He nodded. "I knew your daughter." She opened her palm. A locket. Inside a photo. Sarah and this woman. Together, smiling. "My name is Naomi," she said. "I saw what they did. And I think it's time someone finally listened." She stood on the porch with the locket in her hand. A photograph inside. Worn, faded, but unmistakable. Sarah, smiling. And beside her, the woman now calling herself Naomi. Walter didn't recognize her. Not at first. She was older, different, but her voice, something in the tone, soft, measured, like someone who had been holding their breath for years. "We were kept together for 3 weeks," she said. "Then they moved us." I never saw her again after that. Walter stepped aside. Let her in. She didn't sit, just stood in the middle of the room, eyes scanning the photos on the walls, her voice barely above a whisper. We weren't in a house or a cabin. It was underground, concrete walls, no windows. She looked at him. "Do you want to hear it all?" Walter nodded. She took a deep breath. It was June 1992. I was 14. I'd run away 2 months earlier, hitchhiked from state to state, ended up near Hollow Creek. A man in a truck offered me food, said his wife ran a shelter, said I could stay one night. I believed him. He drove me to a place behind an old train lot. I remember the dirt road, the metal gate, the sound of gravel. I never saw the sky again for 3 weeks. Walter stared at the floor. Naomi didn't pause. They kept us in a room, no bigger than classroom. 8 girls, no names, just numbers. We were intake. Sarah came in 2 days after I did. She looked scared but calm. She talked to me, told me her dad would find her. She said your name a lot. Walter clenched the edge of the table. She saw it. She helped me. Naomi said we stayed awake together, whispered things we miss. She missed your cooking. She missed her bookshelf. She missed the way the hallway light always buzzed at night. She didn't cry much, but when she did, she always apologized after. Walter's throat tightened. They took her one night. Naomi said, same as they took the others. No warning, no explanation. She hugged me, said, tell my dad I didn't forget. That's the last thing she said. Silence filled the room. Walter felt the years collapsing on themselves. One voice, after all this time, finally confirming what no one believed. How did you get out? He asked. Naomi looked down. They sold me, but I escaped the transport van during a fuel stop. Got picked up by a woman who didn't ask questions. She gave me a name, a haircut, and a story. I never told anyone what really happened. Walter swallowed hard. Why now? Naomi's eyes met his. Because I saw your flyer. Last year. In a bookstore. One you still hang. And because I saw a man I recognized. The one who managed our intake. Walter didn't speak. She pulled out a photo. Crinkled. Clipped from a newspaper. Is this him? Walter looked down. His knees nearly gave out. It was Crane, but younger, standing with a school board member, smiling for a scholarship article. Naomi nodded. He didn't take us. He arranged us, and someone paid him. Walter pressed a hand to his forehead. The photo blurred, his breath shallow. Why didn't anyone say anything? He asked. Naomi shook her head. Because no one wanted to believe it, and those who knew had something to lose. She handed him the locket. She gave me this the day before she was taken. Said it was her mom's. Said I should keep it safe. Walter opened it. The clasp stuck. Inside, the faded photo of Sarah, smiling, and behind it, a scrap of folded paper. He hadn't known it was there. He opened it. Only 5 words, written in Sarah's small, tidy hand. Dad, don't stop. Please try. Walter closed his eyes. He stood up, opened the drawer, pulled out the diary, handed it to Naomi. She took it with both hands, ran her fingers across the cover. You kept this? Walter nodded. It's what brought me back to her. Naomi's voice cracked. She said you would. They sat for an hour, didn't speak, just silence, grief hanging like a fog. Then Walter asked, "Do you remember where the room was?" Naomi shook her head. "They blindfolded us coming in. But the truck always turned 3 times. And I remember the smell, pine, and something else, a chemical smell, like oil." Walter nodded slowly. "The train yard." Naomi stood. "I can go with you. To the police. It's time." Walter looked at the locket again, then at the map still pinned on the wall. He said only one thing. "We're not going to the police." They arrived at dusk, same as before, same broken fence, same rusted gate. The train yard looked smaller now. Or maybe Walter just saw it differently, not as forgotten, but as intentional, like someone had let it decay. So people would stop looking. Naomi stood beside him, arms crossed, breathing shallow. She hadn't been back since. Not here, not anywhere like it. "This was it," she said. "I know it." Walter looked around. Nothing obvious. Just weeds, old ties, wind, the usual. But she pointed toward the back fence. There was a turn. They took us left, then right, then straight into a structure. No windows. Metal door. 3 steps down. They walked slowly. Quiet. No one else around. The shed was still there. The trailer. The same as when Walter had last been inside. But Naomi shook her head. It wasn't the shed. It was further back. They walked 50 more feet. The ground sloped slightly. To the left, a caved-in patch of dirt, surrounded by old bricks, like something had once stood there. Naomi stopped. Her breath caught. She pointed. "Here." Walter knelt, ran his fingers through the topsoil. Dirt moved easy. Too easy. Beneath it, concrete, cracked, worn. He swept more dust away. A square outline. A door. Sealed shut. Maybe welded. No handle. "This was it," she said again. This was the intake. Walter stood, looked around. No cameras. No traffic. He pulled his phone out. Snapped photos. Marked GPS. "We should go to the police now," Naomi whispered. Walter didn't answer. He was staring at something on the edge of the door. A small rusted ring bolted into the slab. A hinge. He braced his foot. Pulled. It groaned. Louder than expected. And lifted. Just an inch. Enough to feel the air rush out. Stale. Rotten. Chemical. Naomi stepped back. Walter dropped the door. It slammed shut with a thud. "It's still there," she said. "After all these years." They didn't go in. Not that night. Instead, they left. Quiet. Heavy. That evening, Walter sat at his desk, pulled out the newspaper box he hadn't opened in years, found Sarah's photo from 8th grade, clipped it next to the locket, and taped both above his desk. Then he called someone he hadn't spoken to since the investigation ended. Detective Marie Dawson, retired now, living 2 towns over. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Walter?" "It's me," he said. "I found something." They met the next morning. He brought the diary, the locket, the photo, and Naomi. Marie listened, didn't interrupt. Then she said, "If what you're saying is true, we'll need to involve the Bureau." Walter shook his head. "Not yet. They'll shut it down again. We need time to get inside, to know for sure." Marie hesitated, then nodded. "I can give you 48 hours. That night, Walter returned to the yard, alone, brought gloves, a crowbar, a flashlight, and a single hope that something inside would finally explain Why she never came home. The door opened easier this time. Rust flaked like ash. The smell was stronger, but he pushed through, feet on the top step, then one more, then two. Darkness swallowed him, but he kept going. The flashlight cut through the black, revealed walls, cement, stain, symbols etched, not ritual, just tracking, names, dates, numbers. He moved deeper, past a hallway, then a chamber. Inside, metal beds, 6 of them. Chains rusted to the legs. One mattress had a name carved into it. S.H. He dropped to his knees, stared, ran his hand over the letters. This was it. Her room, her last bed, her final message. Then, a sound, not from outside, from behind him, with shifting, footsteps on stone. He turned, light, catching a figure at the door. Not Naomi, not Marie, someone else. Someone who had been here before. Someone who knew he'd come back. And in their hand, they held the same diary. But not Sarah's. Another. And this one had more names. He turned slowly. The flashlight flickered. There was someone standing in the entrance. Tall, thin, holding a book. Not threatening, but not surprised either. They didn't speak right away. Just looked at each other. Walter's heart pounded. Hand trembling. Flashlight beam jittering. Finally, the voice came. Male. Older. Quiet. I figured someone would come back eventually. Walter swallowed. Who are you? The man stepped forward, wearing a maintenance jacket. Oil on his sleeves. Mud on his boots. He held out the small black book. She left this. Not the one from the backpack. Another. Walter didn't move, so the man set the book down. On the metal frame of the bed marked S.H. Then stepped back. I used to work here, he said. Not during the worst of it, but after, when it was already empty. Walter narrowed his eyes. Empty. When? 94. They shut it down. Quietly. Paved the road, buried the rest. But they didn't take everything with them. He gestured to the diary. That one is from a girl named Carla. She was here in 91. And she mentioned your daughter. Walter stepped forward, picked up the book. It was soft, edges curled. Faded flower pattern on the cover. He opened it. Inside the front, Carla M., age 12, property of Wilburn Intake. Walter flipped through. Pages torn, some smeared, but legible. June 2nd, 1991. We heard a new girl arrived. She cried for her dad all night, didn't say her name. Just said he'll find me. Walter closed his eyes. The man spoke again. They had codes, schedules, drop-off points. Crane wasn't the only one. There were others, all part of it. Walter turned sharply. How do you know all this? The man leaned against the doorway. Because I cleaned it after they left. They didn't want police to find anything, so they paid us. Told us it was an old research site. But I saw the beds, the chains, the carvings. I started writing things down. Dates, names, anything I found. He pulled a folded sheet from his jacket, handed it over. Walter opened it, typed, dated 1993. A list of first names, ages, locations. 13 in total. Sarah was on it. So was Carla. So was Naomi. Walter felt sick. The youngest name was 8. The oldest 15. He backed against the wall, slid down to the floor, held both diaries on his lap. The man didn't move. They called it a temporary shelter, he said. But it wasn't. It was a holding site. For movement. Walter looked up. Where did they go? The man didn't answer right away, then said, "Trucks came, always at night. No plates, no logos. 3 men, black jackets, gloves. I think they moved them across state lines. And then they disappeared." Walter opened Carla's diary again, found a page marked with a folded corner. July 10th, 1991. A man came today, said he worked for the state, gave Mr. Crane an envelope, smiled at all of us, but his eyes didn't, he whispered to the guard. Then 3 girls left. We never saw them again. Walter's hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from rage. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" The man looked tired. "I did, but they didn't listen. And then my wife got sick. I had to keep my job. I convinced myself maybe it wasn't what it looked like, until I saw your flyer a few years ago, and I started looking again." Walter stood slowly. Where are the others? The man shook his head. Some moved. Some went quiet. One died. But I have names. He pulled a second list from his pocket, handwritten, for names circled. These were other staff. They didn't run the place, but they knew. Walter took it, recognized one. Harold Bixby. He used to work in Wilburn's transportation department, handled bus routes. He drove Sarah's bus. Walter stared at the list. "You'll come with me?" The man nodded. "Where?" "To Marie Dawson. She's retired, but she still knows how to make people listen." Walter looked around the room once more, at the 6 beds, at the initials scratched in metal, at the second diary still open in his hands. He said one word, "Carla." The man nodded. "She didn't make it." Walter didn't ask how. They stepped out of the room, back into the night air. Walter turned once, closed the door behind him, sealed it again, not because he was done, but because he now knew what he had to do. This wasn't just about Sarah. This was a pattern. And someone had been keeping the lights off for decades. He called Naomi from the car, told her about Carla, about the list, about the man who had watched it all happen. She was silent, then said, "You were right." They never stopped. Walter drove straight to Marie's house. Didn't knock. She was already waiting on the porch. "Let's make it official," she said. "Time to open the case again." Marie took the list, spread it across the kitchen table, red pen in her hand, eyes scanning names. She didn't ask why Walter hadn't come to her sooner. She didn't need to. She knew how the system worked. She had worked in it long enough to know when silence was survival. Naomi sat across from her, hands folded. The man from the underground room, his name was Rick Lemley, stood at the window, didn't sit, didn't speak, just kept watch. Walter stood in the doorway. He hadn't slept, didn't want to, not yet, not until he knew what she saw, where she went, what happened in the days after the door closed behind her. Marie circled 2 names. One was Crane, the other was Harold Bixby. Bixby handled school transit, she said, and in 1992 he took on a special assignment. He coordinated off-site student placements for Wilburn High. No one looked twice at it. She opened an old personnel database, one of the few she kept after retirement. He reported to a third-party contractor, not the district. Company name was West Pine Educational Outreach, but that company was dissolved in 1993. She clicked, browsed, stopped, found it was a man named Gerald Crane, Daniel Crane's older brother. The room fell silent. Naomi leaned forward. They were running it through the school? Marie nodded, using the appearance of special placements, emotional care, behavioral redirection. But it was a front. Walter stepped closer. And no one noticed? Marie looked up. Not until now. They filed a report with the state, with the FBI, not anonymously. Naomi signed her name. So did Rick. So did Walter. The weight of it was quiet, but it changed the air. An investigation was opened. Quiet at first. Internal. Careful. Within weeks, 2 homes were raided. One in Hollow Creek, one in Oswego. Old records surfaced. Phone logs. Unregistered vans. Dozens of names buried in faded folders. Sarah's wasn't the only one. There were 17 confirmed matches. All missing girls. All within a 3-year window. And all connected to districts that shared transportation through West Pine. They found photos. Some blurred. Some staged. Some real. Sarah appeared in 2 of them. Once in the background. The other, face turned, looking at the camera. Eyes wide. Wearing a jacket that wasn't hers. Walter stared at the image for a long time. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just nodded once. She had lived. For at least some time. After she vanished. She had been held. Moved. Watched. But still, she left a trace. Crane was arrested 6 months later. Charged with obstruction, unlawful imprisonment, and child trafficking conspiracy. He didn't deny it. Didn't admit either. Just stared through the hearings. Silent. Cold. Unmoving. Harold Bixby disappeared. Before he could be questioned. His car was found in a motel lot in Missouri. Room empty. Bed made. TV still on. His bank account had been drained the day before. Naomi testified. Quiet. Precise. She didn't embellish. She didn't dramatize. She just told the truth. And the court believed her. 7 other victims came forward over the next year. Not all had diaries. Not all had names. But they had memories. Enough to reopen 34 cases across 3 states. Sarah's body was never found. There was no burial, no grave, but the court acknowledged her as a victim in the official proceedings. They read her name into the record, and when they did, Walter stood, hand on his chest, eyes closed, Naomi beside him, holding his arm. One line from her diary was included in the court documents. If he finds this, tell him I didn't run. Walter had that line framed. It sits above her bed now. Still made. Still waiting. The house is quieter these days. The porch swing doesn't creak like it used to. The hallway still smells faintly of lemonwood polish, Sarah's favorite. Sometimes Walter reads the diaries again. Both of them. Carla's handwriting smaller. Sarah's steadier. He knows them by heart now. But he reads anyway, because it's the only way her voice comes back. They asked him once in an interview, "Do you feel justice was done?" He said no, then paused. "But I feel truth, and that's more than I had." Naomi teaches now. Quiet school in a quiet town. She doesn't tell her full story, but she listens to the kids who don't speak, and she sees the ones no one else watches. Marie passed away 2 years later. In her sleep, the last note on her desk was clipped from the case. A newspaper article titled, "Wilburn Cold Case Breaks Open 25-Year Silence." She had written in pen beneath it, "She never stopped speaking. We just stopped listening." No memorial was held for Sarah, per Walter's request. But once a year, on June 3rd, he leaves a flyer on the corner of Wilshire Avenue. Same spot, same photo, no words, just her face. And the date, someone always takes it. No one leaves a note, except once. In 2021, folded behind the pole, written in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. I heard her once. She was singing, just before the door closed. Walter keeps that one in his drawer, right beside her locket. And the last letter he ever wrote her, unopened, still sealed, waiting, because in his heart, he knows what Sarah believed from the very beginning. She was taken, but she never gave up, and neither did he.